The pewter cup trembles, not from the boy's grip, though his fingers are small and raw from cold, but from the chill that lives in the stones of this house. It is not winter, not yet, but the wind has teeth tonight, and it scrapes against the wooden walls like a beggar's nails. He sits close to the hearth, knees drawn to his chest, the cup cradled in both hands. Steam curls from its rim, ghostly and thick, mingling with the smoke that slips through the rafters overhead. The chimney was never right not, since the fire 2 summers ago, and now the smoke hangs low, painting every surface in shades of ash. Even the beams above weep with it. His mother stirs a pot of barley ale above the embers. The brew bubbles slow and steady, thick with oats, bog herbs, and the faint sweetness of wormwood. Her sleeves are rolled to her elbows, her arms thin, and splattered with flecks of mash. She does not speak. She hasn't all evening. Words feel fragile lately, like frost-tipped reeds. The cottage smells of wet wool and bitter brew, of mildew and boiled grain. The rushes underfoot are dark with age and soaked through with pig urine, grease, and the slow rot of seasons. A rat shuffles behind the woodpile. Outside, a dog coughs once then again, a long, rattling wheeze. The boy presses the cup to his lips. He does not sip yet. He waits. In Larkmere, a village pressed between 2 forgotten hills. Water is no longer a gift. It is a gamble. Once the stream ran clear, clean enough to baptize a child. Now it slithers black through salted fields, winding past graves no one blessed. The elders say the plague never left, only changed its face. He remembers the girl with the red ribbon, 3 winters ago. She drank from the rain barrel behind the tanner's shed. By dusk, her skin bloomed purple like bruised fruit. She bled from the mouth as the bell at St. Ulfric's tolled 6 times. Then, once more as, if unsure, they buried her with a penny in her mouth and herbs in her shoes. No one speaks her name now, but the memory clings, like the smoke, like the mould, like fear. Since then they drink ale. It is cloudy, yes sour, often, but known, boiled, blessed with bitter herbs and superstition. The old women mutter charms into their mugs. The men drink in silence. Children sip what they're given, not yet knowing that this bitter taste is the closest thing to mercy they'll ever hold. The boy drinks. Slowly, the warmth spreads along his tongue. Down his throat, he winces. Not from the taste, but from memory. His sister had been the last to trust the well. A late spring, too warm, too fast. She'd been thirsty, laughing, young. The kind of young that thinks curses are just stories told to keep you from running. She died within 3 days. They buried her in a blue dress that still smelled of lye soap. No one mentions her now. But the village bell hesitates, each dusk pauses, barely noticeable, just long enough to remember the breath that's missing. He drinks again. The barley mash sticks to his teeth. He swallows. It is bitter, but not cruel. His mother ladles another scoop into the pot. She moves with the rhythm of memory. This is not cooking, it is ritual. Her eyes are sunken, rimmed in shadows, the kind that never sleep. She once laughed, the boy recalls. He doesn't remember the sound, only the shape her mouth made. In the corner of the cottage, nestled in the stone, a saint watches, carved from oak, its eyes hollow, its lips barely formed. Candle smoke has blackened its face over the years. Once, someone painted a gold halo around its head. Now it peels in flakes, like dry skin. The boy glances at it, just once. Then away, he does not pray. There are no miracles in Larkmere. Not any more, only ale. The villagers say it keeps the rot at bay, that the boil burns the sickness out, that the herbs confuse the devil, that barley, when blessed with fire, becomes a shield. The boy does not know if that is true, but he knows that when they stopped drinking water, fewer people died, and fewer is something. A draught creeps under the door. His mother shivers and pulls her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her hands do not stop stirring. She does not need to taste the brew. She knows it by heart. How long to steep, how high to flame. How to judge the wort's readiness by the way it clings to the spoon. She will clean the barrels. Tomorrow, again the coopers say the wood must never sleep dirty, that ghosts live in old grain. She does not believe in ghosts, but she believes in rot. The boy finishes his cup. He sets it beside the hearth and presses his cheek to his knees. The warmth from the fire no longer reaches this far. He listens to the bubbling pot, to the breath of the house, to the silence between coughs outside. The stars begin to pierce the fog. The dog does not cough again in the rafters. Something shifts, a mouse or a spirit, he cannot say. The carved saint watches still. Tomorrow he will sweep the ash. He will carry the empty barrel down to the stream that no one touches, dip a bucket above the leach banks, and haul it back without spilling. His mother will boil it twice, maybe 3 times. She will add rosemary and nettles and a pinch of salt. She will stir with the same wooden spoon, her own. Mother used Dot, and he will drink, because water is a stranger now, and ale's warm, bitter ale is what remains. Somewhere beyond the trees, a crow calls once. Sharp and final Dot. Then the mist returns, soft as wool, and everything disappears. Morning does not arrive with birdsong here. It seeps in slow, with a breath of fog, that curls under doors and nests in the throats of sleeping children. The light is thin, like old milk, barely breaking through the soot-streaked windows. Beneath the cottage rafters, where cobwebs shiver in the cold draught, a woman kneels beside a stone cistern, her hands submerged in water dark as broth. Her name is Anis. The skin of her knuckles is cracked and red, split open from lie and time. She does not wince. She's long forgotten the sting. Her hands move with rhythm, slow and sure, as they scrub the thick iron hoops of the ale barrel. The wood creaks under her weight. The soaked rushes squelch beneath her knees, and from above, something drips. Always something drips. There was a time, not far gone, when she fetched water without dread, when the well in the village square was just a place, not a sentence. She remembers the day that ended. The baker's son, curled like a question on the earthen floor. Eyes, wide lips flecked with foam. His mother had wailed into her apron. By sundown, 3 more children were coughing blood. They said worms had blackened their veins, twisting through the body like roots seeking light. The priest spoke of punishment. The reeve blamed a dead sheep upstream. But no one spoke of water again, not without fear staining the word. Annie's no longer weeps for what was lost. She brews. The fire is already burning low in the hearth. She stokes it with one hand while the other measures out dried barley, crumbling it into the copper pot with a quiet precision born not of craft, but survival. The barley hisses as it hits the boil. She adds rosemary, bog myrtle, and a sprig of elder bark wrapped in twine. Some say, it's to mask the bitterness. She knows better. It's to hold back the dark. The smell rises thick, earthy, bitter. It fills the room, clinging to the beams, to the worn wool of her skirts, to the curls of her youngest, who now clutches her thigh with a sleepy whimper. His hair smells of smoke and sleep. She lifts him gently, wipes a trail of dried milk from his lip, and offers him a shallow wooden cup. Warm ale, barely stronger than broth. His tiny hands grasp it like a treasure. He drinks greedily. She watches him with eyes that do not soften. There is no luxury in tenderness. Not here, this is not indulgence. This is medicine. She drinks next, out of the same cup. The ale is warm on her tongue, the bitterness grounding. This is not how the world is supposed to be, she thinks, but it is how it is. In this corner of England, forgotten by lords and left to the mercy of wet seasons and wormy grain, you survive on what does not kill you. And what does not kill, you keep sacred. The others in the village whisper when they see her mix herbs by moonlight, muttering under her breath. Some say she's a wise woman, others call her worse, but they drink her ale all the same. Even the Reeve's sons, mouths full of mocking, return with empty jugs and eyes that do not meet hers. Annie's doesn't mind. Let them speak. The brew simmers low, now, bubbles popping like heartbeats. She stirs slowly, counterclockwise, as her mother once taught her. The wooden spoon is worn smooth on one side, stained a permanent brown. When she was a girl, it was her mother's hand guiding her grip. Not too hot, she'd say. Death. Love's haste. She remembers her father dying, not from fever or age, but from trust. He drank from the stream behind the sheep pasture, place thought safe. By nightfall, his belly had swollen hard as clay. His screams were so loud, they drove the crows from the rafters. No one has touched that stream since. Outside, the village stirs. Somewhere, a hammer rings against cold iron. A pig squeals. The fields, still black from winter's retreat, wait for seed they may never bear. Life here is always waiting for the thaw, for the next sickness, for the king's men to come collecting tithes. But inside Annie's cottage, the work continues, because it must. The ale cools slowly now, steam rising like prayer. She ladles it carefully into the old barrels. The wood is swollen from decades of use. Each barrel holds stories. One was salvaged from the tavern fire 3 winters past. Another once stored pickled onions for the Lord's cook. Now they hold something closer to salvation. She seals each with a wax-stained lid, presses her palm to the wood, and whispers not spells, not truly, but names. Her father, the baker's son, her daughter, lost to fever before her first spring. Each name, a stitch in the invisible cloak she wears each day. Above her, a crow shifts in the rafters. Its wing hangs crooked, twisted from some old wound. It watches, without blinking, a sentinel in shadow. Some say crows are bad luck. Annis thinks they simply remember. She pours a cup for herself. The first draw from a fresh barrel, it's sharp. On the tongue, with the faint sweetness of over-dried barley, it tastes like damp earth and bitter leaves, like grief made drinkable. She drinks slowly, and then the silence returns. It isn't emptiness, it's something heavier, the kind of silence that waits with you in the room, that leans in as the fire dies and the children sleep and the sky fades behind clouds thick as wool. The well has gone quiet now, no frogs, no flies. Not even a drop of rain dares disturb its surface. She hasn't looked into it since midsummer. The stone rim is covered in moss now. The wooden lid still creaks, but no one dares draw. The memory of the last collapse lingers. 3 homes emptied in a week. The coffin cart rolled through the mud so often. It left grooves still visible in the lane. She lifts her child, tucks him into a straw mattress near the hearth. His breath is slow, warm, alive. The crow shifts again. Outside, fog curls around the eaves like fingers. And somewhere, faint and far off, the bell of St. Mere's chapel tolls once. A sound almost lost in mist. Annie's pours another cup. Not for herself, for the memory of what was, for what may still come. She drinks in silence, and in that bitter, warming quiet, the story turns. Because while the ale may hold off rot for another day, it cannot stop the hunger rising in the fields, nor the footsteps that will soon echo down the road, carrying news of death not born from wells or streams, but from men. The silence is always louder in summer. The monastery bell tolls 6 times. Its sound moves through the valley like smoke. Low, slow, inevitable. It does not call for prayer this morning. It calls for breath, for rhythm, for the keeping of order in a world slowly unraveling. Brother Edmund rises before the final chime fades, his limbs stiff with cold, his fingers numb as he tightens the cords of his robe. The stone beneath his bare feet is damp, as it always is, a chill that climbs up the spine like regret. He does not shiver. Monks do not waste warmth on themselves. Beyond the cloister windows, mist drapes the world in ash. It hides the dying. Oaks, the crooked fence, the silent orchard where no birds sing. Only the smoke from the cookhouse dares move with certainty, rising in gentle spirals toward the great heavens. Its scent is familiar. Barley, yeast, wood ash, bitter hops. The ale is brewing again. Brother Edmund steps into the garden, each footfall softened by moss and damp earth. He does not speak. He has not spoken aloud in weeks. Not since Brother Alan died, tongue swollen in his mouth, unable to breathe, his eyes glassy with the confusion of those who died too young. There had been nothing they could do. The well water had looked clean, but the boy's fever burned through his prayers like paper in fire. Since then, the well has been sealed. A simple board and nail, wrapped in twine and silence. The villagers asked no questions. They only begged for barrels. Edmund crosses the courtyard to the brewing house. The wood is warm against his palm as he pushes the door open. Inside, the air wraps around him like a heavy cloak. Steam rises from the copper vat, thick and scented, clinging to the rafters like breath on glass. He bows his head, not to the fire, not to the pot, but to the small wooden icon mounted on the far wall. St. Arnold, the patron of brewers. His painted eyes are dull, half lost beneath layers of soot and candle smoke. But still he watches, still he blesses. Edmund lights a tallow candle and sets it beneath the vat. Its flickering glow dances across the floor, catching on wet straw, old spills, and a line of footprints from the last novice to clean. That novice is gone now, his bed still made, his robe folded neatly as if he meant to return. The ale smells sweet today, that is rare. Edmund moves carefully, measuring out dried rosemary and a twist of sage. Not much, just enough to quiet the bitterness. He whispers as he drops the herbs into the bubbling brew. Not Latin, not scripture, just names. The ones the bell rings for. The villagers believe the ale here is sacred, and perhaps it is. For every death blamed on the stream, there is a life carried forward by what these monks brew. The fermentation is slow and exacting, watched over like a relic. The barley is ground by hand, the water boiled until the steam scalds the rafters, and then they wait. Not for miracles, but for the slow settling of heat, time, and trust. Faith, after all, is not what is felt. It is what is done again and again, especially when no one is watching. Years ago, pilgrims came here seeking healing. They drank from the spring in the northern grove, said it made their limbs lighter, their dreams clearer. Now, that same spring flows brown and sour, choked with moss and rotting roots. The last man who drank from it was a soldier on his way to York. His horse returned riderless, foaming at the mouth. The monks said no mass for him. Outside, the bell tolls again, a single note, long and mournful, a message, perhaps, or a memory. Edmund wipes his hands on his robe and kneels beside the barrel. It is almost full. The fermentation must begin soon. He breathes deeply. The warmth rises through him, not comfort, never that, but something steadier, something older. This ale will go to the widow's cottage by the ridge. Her child is coughing again, thin, rattling breaths, barely louder than wind through the shutters. They asked for prayers. Edmund will send the ale instead. It is stronger. He pours the wort into the barrel, watching the stream swirl and settle, catching the last of the herbs as they sink like forgotten blessings. A novice will seal it later. If he returns, there is a silence here that does not come from stillness. It comes from what has been emptied. Above the doorway, dried bundles of thyme and juniper sway gently. Protective, some say. Decorative, say others. Edmund does not debate. He has watched too many lungs fill with blood to scoff at what holds back death. He steps outside. The mist has thickened. A soft rain begins to fall, not enough to nourish. Only enough to remind. The land smells of wet stone and waiting. The chapel bell is silent now, but Edmund hears another sound. Far off, along the road, the clatter of hooves. Cartwheels, perhaps the tithes, perhaps worse. Visitors no longer come for faith. They come for food, for shelter, for barrels. A shape forms in the mist, slow moving, wrapped in rough spun and fatigue. A man, perhaps, or a warning. Edmund turns, back toward the cloister. Behind him, the barrel of ale still steams faintly in the doorway. The fire will go out soon. Another novice will arrive. Or not. He enters the scriptorium, dipping his fingers in ash instead of ink. Words are not enough. Here only deeds remain. As he passes the old refectory window, he sees the saint again. Saint Arnold. His face has not changed, though everything around him has died. And still the ale brews. Still it is poured. Still it is carried to the dying, as if it might save them, as if something, anything, might still be saved. In the mist beyond the walls, the cart comes closer. Its wheels creak beneath unseen weight. Not barley this time, not herbs, but perhaps the next chapter, one that does not knock at the door, but breaks it open. The fire burns low. The silence begins to speak. The fever came like fog, slow, soft, almost beautiful. It crept beneath doors, settled into bedsheets, clung to lashes and lips. It did not roar, it whispered. And now the whisper fills the village. By morning, 3 homes are sealed, one with rope, one with brambles, one with silence. No door is marked, there's no need. Those who know, know, and those who don't will know soon enough. Inside the brewer's cottage, Annie's moves like a ghost between her children. She does not speak. She counts breaths. She watches their hands, their eyes, the flush along their cheeks. She watches like a mother who has buried one child already and is preparing to bury more. Her eldest sweats through his woolen blanket. The youngest is still nursing weakly, his lips pale, his belly tight. Between them, she sits, her own skin prickling with the cold that does not come from weather. She has not brewed in 2 days. The fire in the hearth is cold. The mash pot still holds the last remnants of barley and herbs, now congealed into a paste, too bitter to eat. The barrels are untouched, not from neglect, from dread, because now even the ale is suspect. The fever has changed the rules. Outside, the fields rot. Summer had come early, scorching the shoots, cracking the riverbeds. Now the rain returns too late, too heavy, drowning what was left. The barley has failed. The brewer's cart remains empty. What little grain remains is hoarded behind locked doors or buried in cloth sacks beneath hearthstones. The village has not tasted fresh ale in days. The people grow thirsty, and thirst is not patient at the monastery. The silence has taken shape. Brother Edmund tends to the sick without robes, without ritual. He wipes their mouths, their brows, their trembling hands. He does not flinch when they cough blood into his palms. He does not step back when their fevered eyes lock on his. He simply does what must be done. In the cloister cellar, the barrels remain sealed. They've boiled what they can, but herbs are scarce now. The novice who used to gather them was the first to fall, his hands still stained with rosemary oil as they wrapped his body. The monks burn you branches in the chapel now, but the smoke does not ward off death. Brother Edmund lights a candle for each body, but he no longer lights them in the chapel. He lights them beside the brewing pots, 1 flame per soul. He says nothing. He just watches them burn down to their wicks one by one, while the ale boils beside them. The barrels must be cleaned again in the village square. A man argues with a girl who carries a jug. Her brother is sick, she says. She needs more ale. He says the monks have closed their doors. She says she'll pay. He says no one drinks now, not without risk. She spits at his feet and walks to the stream, the one that winds past the old sheep pasture, the one everyone forgot or pretended to. The water there is black, thick. It carries no frogs, no reflection, but it is wet. And her brother is dying. She cups her hands and drinks, just a mouthful, just enough to fill the jug, and walks home. In silence, by dusk, she is dead. The jug remains in the doorway, still warm from the sun. Annie sees it when she passes on the way to the chapel. She does not stop. She carries no offering, only a handful of dry barley and a prayer caught in her throat. She lays the grain on the monastery step and leaves. No one answers the door. No one needs to. She doesn't go home. Not yet. Instead, she walks to the old well, the one they sealed with twine and nailed board. She pulls the rope from her shawl and ties it around the frame. Slowly, gently, like she's binding a wound, she kneels and listens. No, water stirs beneath. The stones, only the echo of her own breath. Still, she whispers, not for healing, not for hope, for permission. The next morning, the well is found uncovered, and beside it, a bucket filled, not with water, but with ale, warm, fresh, boiled. Annis does not remember drawing it, but her hands smell of smoke. Her arms ache from carrying something heavy. Inside her home, her children sleep, and for now, they do not burn. Word spreads quickly, not through shouting, but through nods, through gestures, through quiet mugs passed from door to door. No one asks where the new ale comes from. They simply accept, with caution. with reverence, because now the ale is not just drink, it is decision. The girl who drank the stream lies in an unmarked grave near the thorn bushes. The man who refused her plea now speaks to no one. He sits in the chapel courtyard each night, eyes closed, lips moving without sound. Some say he prays. Others say he waits. The fever continues, but something else arrives with it. A shift, not a miracle, but a kind of agreement. They will not return to water. Not now, not ever. Because what lives in water is not life, it is forgetting. And what lives in ale, for all its bitterness, all its burn, is memory. The barley is rationed, the herbs gathered in secret, but the brew continues, even if only a bowlful at a time, even if it must be shared, even if it means someone goes without, because each cup now is a vow, a name unspoken but remembered in steam and in the dark, in the silence, in the hours between coughing fits and the scrape of shovels in earth. That vow matters, and far beyond the fields, beyond Larkmere and its sickness and silence, a rider crosses a dry riverbed. He carries a satchel of scrolls, stamped with a seal no villager has seen in years. He does not bring barley, he brings news, the kind that cannot be boiled, the kind that does not wait, the kind that ends stories. The rider did not dismount. He stood at the edge of Larkmere, like a shadow fallen from the sky, cloak dusted white with the road's long hunger, boots cracked, hands gloved, though the air was warm. His face was lined with sun and old judgment. His horse, thin as a somme, breathed steam into the silence. None approached him, no one dared. They watched from doorways, from behind smoke-darkened glass, through the slits of shuttered windows. Children pulled back from the light. Dogs growled, then whined, then went quiet. He did not knock, he waited. When the bell at St. Ulfric's tolled once, just once, the village exhaled as if death itself had announced its return. Brother. Edmund met him first. The monastery doors opened with a groan that echoed through the valley. Not a welcome, just a gesture. The rider stepped forward, slow, deliberate, as if each movement were being measured by some divine weight. I bring letters, he said. His voice was hoarse, unused. He handed Edmund the satchel without ceremony. They come from the lords, steward, and the bishop at Wexmoor. He did not wait for permission to speak again. There are new laws, new punishments. There is talk of heresy. The villagers, gathered now in a slow-growing ring, could not hear all of it. But they heard enough. Words like plague and forbidden. Words like barrel, brew, blame. The message was simple. No more ale. The church had spoken. The bishop's seal bled red wax on the parchment, declaring the practice unclean, unblessed, unsanctioned. Brewing by unordained hands, especially by women, was now heresy, dangerous, punishable, Annie's. Standing just beyond the square with a jug in her arms, did not flinch. She had known this was coming, the moment she saw the cart, the moment the fever returned, the moment her eldest coughed blood into his blanket. Still, to hear it spoken, final cold, from the mouth of a man who'd never boiled wort or buried. A child, it felt like being told to die in silence. Brother Edmund read the letter once. Then again, he did not speak. His hands, always so steady, trembled slightly as he rolled the parchment closed and tucked it into his robe. I will speak with the bishop, he said quietly, but the rider was already turning. There is nothing to speak, he said. Burn the barrels, seal the wells. The sick must be reported, and the women who brew. He did not finish. A wind passed through the square, dry, smelling of crushed nettles and scorched barley. The villagers said nothing. Not then, not when the rider mounted his horse, not when he rode out without a backward glance. But later, much later that night, the sky caught fire. Not from lightning. From ale the barrels burned behind the chapel, flames licking the stars, sparks scattering like the bones of saints tossed into wind. The monks stood in silent rows, their robes catching ember light, their lips pressed into lines of ash. But it was not Brother Edmund who set the fire. It was Annie's. She did not flee. She poured the last jug of her brew at the monastery door, like an offering or a warning, and watched it steam across the stones. Inside her, something broke, and in its place, quiet, not defeat, conviction, because they would not obey, not this. The next morning, the fever took her youngest, gently, softly, no cries, no final breath, just a stillness that spread like dawn. She bathed his body in boiled ale. She wrapped him in the cleanest cloth she owned. She placed rosemary in his palms, and she buried him beneath the fig tree, beside the sister he'd never known. She did not ask the priest. She did not wait for the bell. Larkmere began to shift. The villagers spoke less. They brewed in silence. The rituals returned, slower now, more sacred. A thumbprint of ash on each forehead before drinking. A sprig of sage beneath each cup. No one said the word illegal. No one said church. They only whispered, safe, because the ale was not just drink now, it was defiance. Each barrel hidden was a breath stolen from death. Each sip was a secret kept. Each mug was passed with a glance, a nod, never a smile. They grew careful. The mash was buried in compost heaps too. Disguise the scent. The barrels stored in root cellars, beneath false lids of turnips and salt. The brewing pots were cleaned with scorched straw and hung from rafters like drying meat, and in the dark they waited, because rumours come faster than riders, and word had spread from hill to hill, village to village, that Larkmere still brewed, that they lived longer, that they remembered the old ways. So when the fever reached the outer hamlets, when the wells turned black in the next valley, when the rain came red with rust, and birds fell from the trees without song, people came quietly, carrying nothing but jugs and hope. Annie's opened her door to the first woman who arrived. She had a child on her hip and blood in the corner of her eye. She offered no coin, just her name. Annie's poured 2 mugs, one for the woman, one for the child, and said nothing, because grief needs no words, because trust lives in the cup, because some truths, the best ones, are only passed hand to hand. That winter, the fields froze early. The barley failed again. But still, the village endured. Not because of prayer, not because of punishment, because of ale, boiled, bitter, blessed. They drank together beneath the fog, beside the graves, beneath candlelight and smoke. And the bell rang, late each dusk, always. A beat behind, always remembering. The water remained still, but the ale lived, and in the monastery scriptorium, Brother Edmund writes by candlelight, a new gospel, not of saints, but of survival, and in it he writes the names, not of martyrs, but brewers, and the last word on the final page, written in barley ink beneath a single scorched feather, is, remember, the frost came early that year. It painted the rushes silver, turned the black earth hard and hollow beneath the step. Even the stream, the cursed, whispering stream, slowed its song to a thin murmur, shallow and cold, like the voice of someone who no longer has anything to say. Larkmere did not stir much any more. The doors stayed closed, the fires low. Children were kept inside, not from fear but from memory. There was a peace now, of sorts, the kind that arrives not with a trumpet but a sigh, not with triumph but with understanding. Outside Annis's cottage, the fig tree stands bare. Beneath it, the ground is sunken, quiet, tended with care. She places rosemary there each morning, sometimes thyme, never tears. Her hands have no salt left to give. Inside, the hearth burns low, the mash pot is dry, the barrel's empty. She brews no more, not because she has lost hope, but because she has given it to others, to the girl in the red shawl, now boiling wort in a clay cauldron outside her grandfather's barn, to the smith's wife, who stirs wild sage into her mixture and leaves a cup each night on the chapel step, to the monks, who no longer seal the monastery doors, but leave them open a crack each evening, just wide enough for a jug. Annie's watches, and waits, and rests. The fever no longer walks. The lanes, the coughing has stopped. The graves have settled into stillness. But what remains is not emptiness, it is reverence. They remember now, not only the lost, but the way they endured, through bitter cups and boiling pots, through breath and shadow, and silenced at the edge of the village. The stream has begun to clear. It trickles pale now, not black, not holy, just water again. The old women say the curse is lifted. The priest says the bishop has fallen ill. The steward's cart has not returned in 3 moons. But the villagers do not rejoice. They are not fools. They know the quiet is only ever a visitor. Still they live. They share seed. They bake thin loaves and offer them without asking for coin. They whisper old songs to children not yet old enough to understand them. And at dusk, the bell tolls, always 1 beat late, always in honor of the breath that did not make it. Inside the monastery, Brother Edmund writes, still not letters now, nor confessions, nor ledgers. He writes stories, inks them with crushed barley and soot, binds them in linen stiffened with beeswax. He does not sign them. He simply marks the corner with a single line, a scar of ink shaped like steam rising from a cup in one of those books. He has written Ias's name twice, once as a brewer, once as a mother. The monks no longer question the brewing. They have learned, they have seen. The fever taught them more than scripture ever did. Now, when they ladle ale to a stranger, they do so with bowed heads, and the novices are taught not only Latin, but fire, how to stir, how to boil, how to test the scent of rosemary on the tongue. It is holy work now, no longer forbidden, just sacred. The village does not speak of miracles. They do not need to. They have something better. Remembrance, on the coldest night of the year. A boy walks to the fig tree alone. He is 12 now, or maybe 13. His shoulders have grown, but his hands still tremble in the wind. He carries a cup, not pewter, but wood, carved with care, oiled with herbs. He kneels, he pours, and he whispers. For her, no one sees. Him, no one needs to. This is how stories last, not in stone, but in gesture, in quiet, repeated acts of love that ask for nothing but time. The wind does not howl that night. It sighs, low and long, as if the land itself is exhaling. And in that breath, something ends, not forever, just enough so that something else can begin. far from Larkmere. Over the last frozen ridge, a traveller sits by a fire made of heather and bone. He sips from a flask, raises it to no one in particular, and says, "Did you hear about the village that drank no water?" Another voice replies, "Aye, and lived. The ale is gone, but the memory is full." And the silence, finally, rests.